Today I want to show you how to make half square triangles using triangles on a roll. And they come in a package. It's a roll of papers, and with these papers you can make half square triangles. So each package makes 800 half square triangles, and that makes the job of making these little guys so much easier because the papers show you exactly where to sew and exactly where to cut, so it makes it just so handy when you use these papers. So they come on a roll, of course, and you will cut them apart. The best way to cut them apart is in sets of 4, like I've done here, and I'm going to then make 8 half square triangles at once. So I've cut out some fabric, 2 pieces of fabric that I'm going to use with my paper, and the good thing about this process is I can just roughly cut out the fabric needed for the half square triangles. It does not have to be an exact 7-inch square, 8-inch square, whatever the pattern calls for. Just roughly cut out some fabric and then you're good to go. So I'm laying the paper down onto the fabric, and the fabric should be right sides together. I'm going to pin in 2 corners of the paper through all the layers of the fabric just to hold it in place. I've done a little bit of testing with these guys, and I actually used some fabric spray adhesive to spray the paper and then stuck it to the fabric. I liked it because it held the fabric down really nice and tight, but it also was a little bit hard to remove the paper from the fabric, so I thought it was probably best just to pin it, but that's totally your choice. So now I'm going to take the paper and the fabric over to my sewing machine. I'm going to sew on all of the dotted lines on the paper. One of the things that you want to make sure that you remember to do is make the stitch length on your machine quite a bit smaller. So what that does is it helps to perforate the paper, and it makes it easier for removal. I have now sewn on all of the dotted lines on the paper, and I'm ready to trim all my half square triangles up. So I'm going to remove the pins that I put in earlier, and I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and ruler, and the first thing that I'm going to do is cut around the very outside of the square, and I'm cutting on the solid lines very carefully, because if your ruler might slip a little bit, it could cut into your half square triangle and then mess with the size of it. So you want to be careful just to cut on those solid lines exactly where those lines are. So now I've cut all the way around the outside, and I'm going to cut on the inside where the solid lines are. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut right through the center on the solid line, and then I'll turn and I'll cut through the center going the other way. I'm going to set a couple of those aside, and then I'm ready to cut diagonally on this one. And now I have 2 triangles. I'm ready to remove the paper. So I'm going to fold the paper back to the stitch line. I'm going to press it well with just my fingers, and then I'm going to tear and tear. And then the last little bit is just to tear this little section at the back of the seam. Now, sometimes you'll have little papers that are left in the stitch line, and it's pretty easy to just kind of scratch out a little bit, pull those out, or even use a tweezer to pull those out. Now I'm ready to take it to my ironing board and press these little guys. So one of the things you want to do is always have the dark fabric facing up. So I have yellow on the other side, burgundy on this side. I'm going to have the burgundy facing up. And that way, when I go to press this, the seam will be facing the dark side of the fabric. And the reason why we do that is because then on the right side of your beautiful quilt that you've made, you will not see a shadow of a dark fabric underneath some of those lighter fabrics. The first thing you want to do is press on the seam that you just sewed on the back side of the square. Sorry, it's a triangle. You're going to open up the corner of the triangle, and as you pull it back, use the tip of the iron to press that seam. Now you want to be careful not to pull too much, because these are bias seams, and so if you pull at it too much, it's going to make it rippled and it's not going to lay flat. But now you have a half square triangle. You're going to have little tabbies on two corners, and you'll just take a scissor and snip those little guys off. And now you have a perfect half square triangle. So one of the things I want to note on here is that these half square triangles are for 2-inch finished. What that means is when you see this block in your finished quilt, it will measure 2 inches. Well, right now it's measuring 2.5 because you have to allow for the seams. So make sure that when you're buying the half square triangle paper, you are purchasing the right size for your specific project. Thank you for joining me today. I know this looks like my kitchen. It sort of is. It's actually my craft kitchen in my house. I have 2 kitchens, and this one is the one that I use to do my crafts in. I also might do a little baking. You see my mixer back there. But it makes a great place to do tutorials for you. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and be sure and subscribe to my channel, as I will be posting more videos in the future. Thanks. Bye.